Did I just discover a secret brisket ingredient that Texas pitmasters aren't telling us about? At least one Texas barbecue restaurant is using this weird ingredient that I've never even heard of, and maybe more are using it as well. So in this video, I'm testing it out on a brisket to see if it makes a Texas-style brisket taste better, or maybe it won't make it taste better. Maybe it'll make it taste worse. We'll find out in this video. Let's get smoking. One of my viewers, CoolJ77, pointed out that Chef Ara from Harlem Road Barbecue in Richmond, Texas, is using this in his brisket rub. It's called SUMAC, and it's a type of berry that's dried, then it's ground up, and it's turned into a ground spice. Now, according to this video, Chef Ara uses it in his brisket rub at his restaurant in a ratio of approximately 1 part SUMAC to 4 parts salt and pepper. I don't really know the purpose of adding SUMAC to a Texas-style brisket rub, but Cool J suggested that it adds a bit of citrusy flavor to the brisket, and he also mentioned that Max from Texarkana Barbecue likes to use it sometimes to help build a better bark on the brisket. Now, I reached out to Max to see if he has any thoughts on this, and if he gets back to me, I will leave it in a comment in the comment section below. I'll be honest with you guys, I was initially skeptical about using this weird ingredient on my brisket. It seems kind of exotic, and I've never even heard of it before, let alone tasted it to my knowledge. But I got some on Amazon and I tried it, and just raw, without even putting it on the brisket, it actually tastes really good. It's got this mild sort of citrusy flavor. It's got a bit of tang. It's got a bit of sweetness. It's kind of like dried blueberries or something similar to that, but a little bit more tart and a little bit sweeter almost. So it's an interesting flavor, and I think it could go well with brisket to kind of round out the flavor of the brisket and counteract the heavy fattiness and saltiness and pepperiness with a little bit of acidity and acid to go on the sides of the tongue, and just in general round out the flavor. So I'm hopeful, but we won't know until we actually try it out on a brisket, so that's what we're gonna do. But before we get to rubbing the brisket, I want to talk about another amazing rub and the sponsor for this video, Sure Shot Sid's Gunpowder Rub. Although I'm not using it in this particular video, I use Sure Shot Sids all the time on my briskets, pork butts, steaks, and pretty much everything I cook. The one I really like the most for brisket is the original gunpowder rub. It's great to use as a final layer after applying some coarse ground salt and pepper, because the salt is really finely ground and it's got this amazing savory flavor, and it also darkens up the brisket a little bit ahead of time. My second favorite rub is their barbecue rub. It's got amazing balanced flavor that goes great with anything, and I also really like the coffee rub, which I used on pork belly, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Whether you're doing backyard barbecue or competition cooking, Sure Shot Sids has something for everything you need, and it's really helped me to elevate the flavor of my barbecue. So I highly recommend it, and I encourage you to try it out. I'm going to leave a link in the description section below so you can check it out and buy some for yourself. All right, let's get back to rubbing this brisket. All right, for the rub, what I'm going to start with is a base of a 1/4 cup of coarse cracked pepper and a 1/4 cup of kosher salt. This is Aaron Franklin's ratio that he's mentioned in his book, what's it called? Aaron Franklin's book, A Meat Smoking Manifesto. So that's what I use as a base for the rub, and then I also add a tablespoon of Lowry's, and for the sumac, I have no idea how much to add, but I did find one recipe on the internet for a brisket rub that has sumac in it. I'll link it in the description section below, and it was about 1/10 of a part of sumac to 10 parts of other ingredients, so that works out to around a tablespoon. So let's start mixing this right now. So starting with a 1/4 cup of cracked black pepper. This is Clubhouse brand. It's probably a bit bigger than 16 mesh, which Aaron Franklin uses a lot, but I find it's still pretty similar and has a nice granule size. And now a 1/4 cup of kosher salt. You can use Morton's or Diamond Crystal or really any other brand. I just like the stuff that doesn't have a lot of powder in it. It's consistent and there's large granules throughout. Put that in there. And now I'm going to add a tablespoon of Lowry's. A lot of people use this on their briskets, including me. I use it all the time. Aaron Franklin has even said that he's used Lowry's in the past. He said that in an interview with Daniel Vaughn in Texas Monthly. So it's kind of tried and trusted for brisket rubs, so I like to put it in my rubs. And now the sumac. This is Sadaf brand sumac. You'll probably get another brand if you live in the US. This was a brand, I think, from Canada. Could be wrong about that. Just check out on Amazon and get ground sumac. And it smells really citrusy. I think it's pretty much like ground up berries, so it's what you would expect if you were smelling ground up dried berries. Very citrusy, tart, and I think that a whole tablespoon of one will actually be a good ratio here. Yeah, I think that's more than enough by the looks of it. So I'm gonna give this a little bit of a shake. Not too much yet. And then what I like to do, and this is something I've been doing recently, it's still TBD whether it's a good idea or not. I've been testing it. I don't know if it helps the rub stick or if it prevents the rub from sticking to the brisket or has any other detrimental effects. But one thing it does for sure is this spray-on vegetable oil really helps the rub bind, especially if you have things like Lowry's, and which has powdered salt in it. It can just all float to the bottom, and when you're applying it to the brisket, you get the large granules coming out, and then you're left with all the small granules at the end. So this prevents that. I just give it a couple squirts, and then I put the lid back on, and I shake it vigorously. Like I got some of my beard hair on there. Get rid of that. That could have added some extra flavor though. And if you taste the rub after putting the oil in it, it actually tastes better. It blends the flavors together a little bit more. So I'm really liking the method so far of using a little bit of that spray vegetable oil. But we'll see. I gotta test it. And I'm gonna give it a few squirts of just some water. Just helps the rub stick. And it helps the salt to, whoa, there's some trim there. Get rid of that. Yeah, this water just helps the salt kind of dissolve and penetrate and dry brine the brisket a lot easier, because otherwise it has to extract water from the brisket and then commingle with it and then dry brine the brisket. Should be good. Starting with the back of the brisket. Give it a nice even coat. Then I'll go around the edges here. It doesn't like to stick to the fat cap as much, or this hard part on the side, so I usually give it a little bit more water on those edges. So I get the edges here, and we'll flip it. Give it another pass. Okay, and I'll give you guys a close-up here. It's looking really different than what I'm used to for my briskets. That red sumac really adds some color, and it darkens up the brisket already quite a bit. Usually when I rub a brisket, it's a lot lighter than this. It looks like it might help with darkening the bark up a little bit, but we won't know until we put it on the smoker. So I'm gonna vac seal this because I'm smoking it in a few days, so it'll dry brine in the vac seal, and then I'll take it out and I will put it on the smoker and we'll see what happens. After a few days of dry brining, I started the brisket out on my Oklahoma Joe's Longhorn reverse flow in reverse flow format at around 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I started ramping it up to 275 after around 5 hours. At the 7-hour mark, I noticed there was a bit of a bald spot kind of pumping out moisture on the flat, so I tilted the brisket up with a split of wood so the moisture would run off and I could develop some bark in that area, and I also foiled off the flat so it wouldn't overcook. But most importantly, 7 hours into the cook, I noticed that the brisket bark was a lot darker than my other briskets at this time of the cooking process. So there might be something to this theory that the sumac helps with the bark in some way. And then at around the 12-hour mark, the brisket was probing at least 190 everywhere I probed, so I took it off the smoker, I wrapped it with clarified butter and tallow like I normally do, but again, I was surprised at how dark the brisket was at this point. Usually my briskets are dark after 12 hours, but this brisket is jet black. Then I held the brisket for 15 to 20 hours at 150, again, like I normally cook my briskets, and I got ready to taste it. All right, let's get this party started. Whew, okay, this brisket's been resting for 15 hours now. I'm gonna put some gloves on, actually. Gloves are always good. Never mind, I don't have any gloves. Okay, we'll take this brisket out. Put some of that yummy goodness on the board. And let's do the big reveal here. Look at that, looking pretty nice. Smells really smoky. I don't really smell any other hints of like bitterness or savoriness or sweetness from the sumac.
It smells like a regular brisket to me so far, but we're going to slice into this thing and we're going to see if the sumac actually made a difference and if you should pay attention to it and maybe go buy some in the link below with my Amazon affiliate link, or maybe it has no impact on the taste of the brisket and this whole video was just a waste of time. So we'll slice into this thing. Right about there. Ooh, slicing like a dream. And get some tallow on there. Get some tallow on there because I don't like my brisket to oxidize. And there you go, guys. Looking pretty tasty. Give that a little squeeze. Ooh, delish. I have noticed that the board tallow has picked up a little bit of a darker hue than normal. I don't know if that's from the smoke or the sumac. Could be any one of the two things or something else. Okay. We'll slice a slice of the flat here, and I'll give you guys a look. Looking pretty nice. Pull it apart, pulls apart really nicely. So let's get a taste of the bark here. Oh yeah, can definitely taste the sumac. It tastes exactly what the sumac tastes like when it's raw. It just has a little bit less of an oomph as it does when it's raw. It feels like that flavor of the raw spice has been backed off a little bit during the cook, but you can definitely still taste that same flavor profile. It's kind of sweet, a little bit of acidity on the sides of the tongue. It has a really nice flavor. I actually like it a lot. It's adding a lot of sweetness. Okay, I'm going to chunk off a bit of the burnt ends over here, and we'll give that a taste. Oh, that smells very sumac-y. Yeah, again, it adds a bit of acidity. It rounds out the flavor of the smoke and the salt and the pepper a little bit more. I'm actually really liking it. I'm actually really, really liking it. The sumac sort of infuses with the tallow a little bit. And when you get the tallow on the slices, you get a bit of sumac flavor on the actual slices themselves and not just the bark. And it tastes really, not really, but a little bit lemony on the sides of the tongue. And it just rounds out the flavor a lot more with that tartness and that bitterness and that acidity and a hint of sweetness. So, what are my conclusions on this? Should you use sumac in your brisket rub? I would say, yes, you should definitely try it. I really liked it in this video. It rounded out the flavor of the brisket bark and the rub so that it had a little bit of acidity on the sides of the tongue. It had a little bit of sweetness, and it wasn't so salty and peppery, and it had a little bit of those extra flavors on the sides that were really in the background. In my opinion, it also helped to darken up the bark a little bit, and it added some extra texture, but I can't really be sure. It could just be this brisket. I need to test it out a little bit more to be sure. But the one thing I can be sure of is that, yes, sumac is a really good ingredient to add to a brisket rub. It does go really well with the flavors of a brisket. You should definitely try it out. I put a link in the description section below to buy some, but really you guys can just pick it up at your local grocery store, get it anywhere. It's pretty inexpensive. You don't have to buy it through my Amazon affiliate link unless you want to support my channel, which I would be super grateful for. But thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you watching this video. If you want to get more involved in the Smoke Trails Barbecue community, consider joining my Patreon. You'll get access to a private Discord chat server where you can chat with an awesome community of barbecue nerds like myself and get instant access to me anytime to answer all your questions. You can join the Facebook group, the Smoke Trails Barbecue Nerd Facebook group. You can follow me on Instagram, or you can just like and subscribe and comment below. And if you have any suggestions for other experiments or any questions, just drop a comment below. Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate you guys watching. I will see you in the next video, and happy smoking.